Welcome to the podcast. How's life, man?
Good.
Yeah?
Good.
How's business?
Busy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Things are picking up a little bit?
The summer's usually slower.
Yeah.
We've just been busy. I have a few deals under contract. Well, one under contract in the roads.
Yeah.
We bought a house to develop as well.
Nice.
In the roads
Yeah.
on 22nd Road.
Okay.
We actually we're looking at the plans and all of that right now.
Nice. Who's
So
we?
it's-
You and...
You know David Deleon? I think you've met him.
I think he's your partner, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was my partner in the brokerage side. Now we have some multifamily together.
Nice.
And we do a lot of investing together.
That's awesome. So you guys bought a single-family home in the roads?
A lot with a single family home to tear down and redevelop.
Okay. And into
Yeah.
what are you guys gonna do with it?
It's gonna be a 4,000 square foot home.
Okay,
We're
so
gonna sell it
you guys are
in
gonna
2 years,
okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So you bought it with the house on it. You're gonna rezone it or not rezone it, I guess.
No, just pull plans,
Yeah.
permits and plans, and start construction.
Nice. And the first time you guys do something like that?
We've done a lot of remodels.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, we've done quite a few remodels, and then multifamily remodels and flips.
Mhm.
And now we're getting into single family homes.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I dipped into one of my previous guys that worked with me as well, Federico. We also did something similar. We bought a single family about a year ago now, almost, and we pretty much gut renovated the inside of it, put a pool.
Where?
It's in North Miami. It's on the address is 535 North Biscayne River Drive.
Okay. Nice.
So it's north.
I like that area. It's growing a lot.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a 20,000 square foot lot. And we did the pool. We put like a paddle court in the back. So,
Really?
so we built out a big court.
That's nice.
And just renovated the bathrooms, bedrooms, and we're gonna take our first stab at short-term rental and see how it's gonna go with
I mean,
kind
the
of hosting
paddle
big
court's a
groups.
nice addition.
Yeah.
I play a lot of paddles. So.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, these days I feel like it's like the most up and coming. I feel like sport.
Yeah.
So we wanted to try to appeal to the widest audience. So for that demographic that we're shooting for is like, the parties of 10 to 12 people that come in for Miami, whatever it is, events, just a weekend, bachelors, bachelorettes, stuff like that. They'll have their own pool, have their own amenities, and have a lot of space to operate.
Permit wise, is there you have to pull certain permits to be Airbnb approved, right?
You have to have a short-term rental license, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. And this is gonna be your first time doing
First
it?
time. I mean, I've done renovations before, but it'll be the first time doing a single-family home renovation, and first time doing the short-term rental with Airbnb and stuff. So that'll be the new.
And what's a
the new
nightly
thing.
rate on that?
Average is like 800 a night or something
Really?
like that. Yeah. Some of them are 1,500 a night. Some of them are like 600
In
a
that
night.
area?
Yeah. So
Wow.
occupancy is about 70% or so.
Okay.
So not
'Cause
that
I know
much.
there's a lot of Airbnbs now in the last few years.
Yeah,
That have popped up.
yeah, and a lot of them do well, especially if you have a good management company behind them. So the idea is going to be to just try to profit from the cash flow versus the equity and appreciation, which is normally what my investments have all been based off of. Is buy at a decent price, renovate a little bit, and then sell. This one will be more so renovate and then just try to capitalize on some appreciation, but mainly just the cash flow. Because it's hard to do cash flow long-term rentals, especially these days.
Yeah.
But I think with the short-term,
makes sense.
nothing
with
makes sense.
interest rates and everything the way they are.
Yeah.
You don't really cash flow unless you're getting a crazy deal.
Yeah,
which-
or unless you're putting a lot of money down or doing
putting
cash
a
or
lot of
something.
money down or getting a crazy deal, but it doesn't make sense. I mean,
Yeah.
we have triplex in Design District,
Mhm.
and people have asked, can I Airbnb? I'm like, look, run your numbers. It's not going to make sense.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Even putting 20% down, it doesn't make sense unless
Yeah.
you're above 50% LTV. You're
Yeah,
not really
below.
cash flowing.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's tough. Before I forget, though, also wanted to give you a little Mortgage Bolt swag box that I'm sure you've seen around for Mr. David right there. Just some
Thank
nice
you.
merch and copy of
you.
the book, and we customized the box for you. So
You've written a couple of books, right?
just that one, just
Oh, I
that,
thought
just that
you-
one so
I
far.
thought there was another book that I saw.
Maybe coming soon. We'll
Yeah?
see.
Oh, this is the only book?
Yeah. This is the only one so far,
Thank
man.
you, man.
But yeah, of course, man. Of course. So Anna is just part of your team, or what is her role with?
So I have now we're 8 people
Okay.
on my team, all
Mhm.
licensed agents, and yes, Anna's one of the agents on my team.
Nice. That's awesome.
She came from New York. She was an agent in New York, and then she moved down here, and I met her, and she's been doing well.
Yeah.
She's been doing well. We just closed that deal, and Brickell Bay Club.
Yeah.
That you helped us.
That was a good one.
It was a nice one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. It was a long one. Long one, right?
It was a tough one.
Yeah. It was. It's always interesting
got it done.
to go into those contracts that are like 2 months or 60 days, because nothing but time, nothing but time to go through, and then with time, typically you get different kind of questions, and it has a whole different kind of set of challenges versus a quick and easy transaction, which sometimes they're quick and not easy, or quick and easy, but if they're long, typically you're always kind of having
a higher
to
chance for something to go wrong.
Something to happen, right? So you got to tread lightly. Are you guys more focused on the buyer side of things or the listing side of things?
We do both.
Yeah.
I think we sway more towards buyers.
Mm-hmm.
We advertise a good amount. We do Zillow and different types of online lead gen.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're trying to shift more definitely to listings.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, everything's changing
Yeah.
in terms of the buyer brokerage agreements.
Right.
And it's becoming tougher to get clients to sign an agreement
Mm-hmm.
when you meet them online, right? Or
Yeah.
when it's an online lead.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think online leads are going to get tougher. I think as a whole, it's going to be better for the industry and for buyers to be represented, because buyers right now, what happens, they go online and they see a listing and they call 3 agents, and they can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because now they're going to have an agreement with 1 agent. They're going to choose the agent that they think is going to best represent them. So it's going to be mutually beneficial for buyers and the agents as well, buyers agents as well.
Yeah.
At first there's going to be some confusion on both parties, because usually we're used to just picking up the phone, going with the buyer, and you show up, write up the contract, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's definitely gonna change. I think as a whole for the industry, it's gonna be something that's gonna be better long run though.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, great segue, because I took some notes here because I knew we were going to talk about this a little bit with the August 17th settlement. So this is happening, like we said, August 17th. And essentially what it's doing is, it says MLS participants working with buyers must enter into written agreements before touring homes, effective August 17th, 2024. So from what you just said there, the premise is that now there cannot be any compensation listed for buyer's agents on the MLS.
Correct.
And the buyer has to enter into an agreement with the buyer's agent even prior to a showing taking place.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the buyer to negotiate with the seller's agent and the seller to determine what, if any, compensation will be provided to the buyer's agent, right?
Correct.
So do you foresee listing agents and sellers still being able to sustain their 3% buyer side commission, or do you foresee that being less, gone completely, more? What is your sentiment as somebody who works in this industry and also has 8 agents that are probably going to be looking at you for answers for that?
So it's always been negotiable,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's something that people don't know. They think there's a standard 6%. That's just what's been common over the years. So I guess it's kind of become standard in the industry, but it's not a set rate. I mean, you see it on the MLS, you see it in properties, you've got properties, and you see what they're getting, and it's 2.5%, 2%. So it's always been negotiable. I think that there is going to be some buyers that are going to want to go direct, but they're not necessarily getting a better deal. And I think someone that's buying, especially on the higher end, they want to be represented by someone, right? So someone that knows the area, is a professional, and I think it's going to weed out a lot of people that are kind of fishing for buyers and aren't really in the industry, because they're not going to, a buyer that is in above $1 million isn't going to trust someone unless that's their full-time job, right? And they're going to have, it's going to create more transparency for buyers. And right now there's no transparency for buyers. They don't know until the day of closing, and you know this, they don't know until the day of closing what the buyer's actually making. Now it's going to be just set off, look, I'm making 2%, 3% on this deal, or on these deals that we're looking at. My job is to represent you and your best interest, and I want to earn my commission. That's the role the buyer's agent has to take. I think on the other side of it, sellers are always going to want to pay someone. If they want to sell and they're eager to sell their property, they're going to pay whatever it takes to sell the property. Obviously, it has to make economic sense on their end, but why wouldn't they, if you told the seller, hey, I have $2 million for you for this property that you're asking 2.1, pretty close to asking price, will you pay me a commission? He's going to say, okay, I mean, why not? Or no, I don't want you're close to 90% close to asking offer. I think in general, it's going to create more transparency in the industry, and it's going to weed out a lot of people that may not be a full-time realtor or buyer's agent.
That don't have that value proposition, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, I think people that it is an extra step. So someone that's going to sign and ink their signature, they're going to look into it and they're going to say, hey, do I want this guy to actually represent my interest? So they're going to think it through and make the best decision for them. And, it's a big financial decision. You're buying. Now in Miami, you can't find anything under $1 million.
Right.
So that's a big transaction, right? It's not a little investment, and usually it's the biggest investment that they'll ever make. So they are definitely going to want someone. I think buyer's agent, there's a lot of talk of buyer's agent disappearing and all of that. I don't foresee that happening. I think there's always going to be someone that wants another party to represent them and have their best interest, and that's not related directly to the seller, right?
Yeah. So run through a scenario here. You are a listing agent and your client is selling like $1 million house in Miami Shores or something.
Okay.
And you guys, it's past August 17th, and you guys get an offer from a buyer's agent asking, with the, let's say it's a full price offer, asking to pay them the 3%. What does that look like for you? What is that conversation you're having with the listing agent? Is that something you plan on accepting, pushing
I'm the
back?
Seller,
You're the seller's agent.
So I'm the listing agent.
You're the listing agent.
Okay. I will present it to them and I say, hey, this person is asking, has been standard for, not standard, again, it's always been negotiable.
Right.
But this is what has become the quote unquote norm in the industry. 3%. This is what it's a fair commission. They're asking, they're paying what you're asking basically, or close to what you're asking depending on where the offer comes in. Well, let's pay them the commission.
But David, I thought we didn't have to pay the buyer's agent commission anymore. Why are you telling me to pay 3% when I don't have to?
Well, they're being represented by someone, so you don't have to take their offer and you don't have to take their proposition. But if you want to sell, this is what it is. And you have to make that decision. We can't go, they have an agreement with, that's where the agreement becomes important, because they have an agreement with that buyer for that property. So there's a showing agreement that they have with that. Or it could be a general agreement where anything that they buy, they receive commission.
Right. But would the agreement be stipulating that, because I thought the agreement was stipulating that the buyer is going to be paying X amount towards the buyer's agent commission, or? So
it depends the way from what I've seen, and there's going to be multiple agreements and they're going to change, I'm sure. Right now I've seen two. There's like the showing one, showing just for one property, and then there's a general agreement, which is a longer agreement. And I think it just depends on the way it's written, but you can, from what I understand, it's negotiable, right? So the seller can pay it, or the seller could say no, but then the buyer would, if they want the property, they would pay it. But it's all negotiable, right? So if a seller wants to sell their property and the condition is that the buyer gets paid 3%, it's up to them to do it, which is the same now. If it says 3% and 3%, they don't have to take that offer. Even if it's at asking price, they could say no. They could ask for above asking price, right?
So essentially, you're going to be taking a look at the deal as a whole, and regardless of 3%, 6%, no percent, it's all about, well, what does that net out to with the offer price and with closing costs and everything like that.
And there's some buyers brokers that could even negotiate a higher rate for. They could say, I want 4%. I'm bringing you a really good offer for this property. I want 4%.
It'd be interesting.
It's up to the seller to determine that. Obviously, the seller's going to say, hey, you're being greedy. Then it goes back to that. the norm has always been 3%.
Yeah,
so
and
I'll pay you
for better or
3%.
for worse, yeah,
So-
it's always a double-edged sword. Yeah, awesome. So transactions you've been doing lately, have any of them been standing out to you in a positive way? Have you closed a transaction in the past year or so that you've been really excited about, that you've been really like fortunate to be a part of? Maybe what's been your favorite transaction you've done in the most recent past?
What have I done? What have I done?
Or they've all just been shitty.
I've done some good ones.
We can cut that part out.
I've done some good ones. I think.
Okay, let's not even limit you to the past year. Let's talk about maybe even, beyond that. Like, can you think of something like that's maybe not one of your personal deals, but something you've done for a friend or a client that you've been just like, man, that was just an amazing transaction, and that was just a really honor to be a part of, something like that?
I negotiated a really good deal. I do a lot of business in Key Biscayne.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Key Biscayne, so it's close to home, and I know it really well. So
Yeah.
I've kind of dedicated a lot of time to market myself in Key Biscayne, and I feel that it's one of the best places to live.
Yeah.
I'm obviously a bit biased.
Yeah.
But it is a great place, and you can't deny it. No one could deny it.
100%,
I mean,
yeah.
I guess going in and out is tough for
Worth
some
it.
people.
Worth
but
it,
it's
though,
the
for
most
sure.
beautiful drive you can take, right? in Miami.
100%.
I did a transaction a couple years ago for a client that's going to be building a beautiful house on the water,
Mhm.
and I feel it was a really nice transaction because I feel like he got one of the best deals for a waterfront lot. So whenever I do any transaction, my goal is obviously to make it happen for my client, but also to win, right, for my client, right? Even if sometimes there's times where I know I could get them a better deal, and I know they're willing to pay more for the property, but as long as I feel like I did right by them and I was transparent and they got the best possible deal that was out there,
Yeah.
I feel like I won. So every time I do any of these transactions, and that was a big transaction. That was we closed at 10 million, 10 million 50 or something.
Just for the lot.
Just for the lot. I mean, there's a house on it, and we have to rent it now while he's getting the plans and everything.
Gotcha.
So that was a really nice deal. I did another waterfront deal before that for 15 million in Harbor Drive. That one was a little tough. The sellers didn't really want to sell. It was when COVID. That was an interesting one, actually, and I think that was my largest transaction I've done for single family. It was when COVID. Prices started going up during COVID. I think it was 2021, 2022.
And going up.
Under contract, and there was
Inter-transaction, not just
and
going
water
up.
for homes in Miami was insane. You couldn't get rid of them faster, right?
Yeah.
At any price.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was bidding wars on $15-20 million houses, right? All across Miami. Anything waterfront that was in livable condition, right? Just because everyone was migrating and they wanted to be waterfront.
It was the first time we've seen like daily appreciation, right?
Correct. And Miami waterfront was a city where you could get a nice waterfront home from $10 to $15 million before. Now it's a lot tougher. You get a lot maybe for $10 to $15 million in a prime area nowadays, right? But people from New York, LA, they were seeing a $10-12 million house, and they're like, wow, this is so cheap. I'm living on the water in Miami. And they would just go online and see all these houses that were from $10 to $20 million that were beautiful in Miami Beach, Key Biscayne, Coconut Grove, Coral Gables, and they just started buying them all up, right? And then it created a frenzy, and that's when my client bought this $15 million house on Key Biscayne. And it was interesting because the seller saw that as we went under contract, and they were trying to back out of the deal. And we had to get attorneys involved and everything, but we got the deal done, and I got it across the finish line. And it was obviously really rewarding to get that deal done for my clients and feel like they won, because now that property's probably worth $25 million, if not more.
And how long ago was that?
That was 2 years ago.
That was 2022.
So
okay.
You're talking about like a 40% appreciation. And
$10 million over 3 years. I mean, that'll make anybody smile for sure.
Exactly. And that's that. I mean, those appreciations are seen all across the board in South Florida waterfront, right?
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of it, right?
Limited inventory, yeah.
There's not a lot of inventory. Even nowadays, you still see a house just sold for $37 million in a spec home in Miami Beach. I think it was on one of the Sunset Islands, which was a broker developer that built it. I think one of the guys involved was Todd Michael Glazer. Is that his name? The guy, the developer? Yeah, I think that's him.
Might be.
But they were close to the record of Sunset Island, which is right now, right? When everything is slowed down, like if you see
crazy, yeah.
all the trends were trending to a recession, right?
Yeah.
And Miami is
set a
still
record,
really
yeah.
hot, and
Yeah.
there's $40 million sales.
Yeah.
Right. Just today the market tanked because everything is signaling towards the stock market tanked because everything's signaling towards a recession. All the numbers, unemployment, everything is signaling towards that. The positive side of that for you and for me is interest rates are going to go down, and I think they went down today. Correct?
They did, yeah,
So,
by about a quarter point, yeah.
So that we needed that. We needed some sort of signals to a recession for interest rates to come down, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it could be a silver lining at the end of the tunnel, right? Because if interest rates go down, prices should go up.
Yeah. So going back to the transaction you're just talking about, I've seen this position before in different environments where sellers might want to back out of a deal for various reasons. Property values are going up, as they're selling. They just don't want to sell anymore. How did you manage to? And most of the time, what I see is they just everybody just lets it go, release and cancel, and move on. How were you guys able to navigate that and get a deal done for your buyer? Do you remember?
Well, first of all, in any deal that you do, everything, the contract has to be airtight. You can't leave room for mistakes, right? That's where it's important. There's not a problem until there is one, right? If like you said, a lot of times these deals fall through and everyone releases because there's a mistake on the contract. So there's a loophole. The attorneys get involved and they said, oh, well, he did an initial page 6 on the contract, so it's not worth suing him for performance because we could argue this in court, right?
Yeah.
So as a broker, it's important to kind of dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure that everything is perfect, right? It has to be perfect on the contract. So the day that something like that occurs, you're like, there's no way of you backing out, and that's what happened there. There was no way for them to back out. We had everything perfect. We had complied with everything on our end from the contract. So they knew they would lose, right?
Yeah.
And we would sue them for performance and tie up the property, and they would have to sell eventually anyways. So, which has happened in transactions. I've never been part of that.
Right.
I've had a couple of scares on a personal property. It happened on a multifamily that we bought.
Yeah.
Just an old man had regret of selling it because he felt he sold it too low, and it was his son actually was a broker that was selling it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So
I was like,
probably blamed it on him.
yeah. But I was like, you gotta sign. I mean, we're here. It was like closing day.
That was literally on closing day.
No,
oh,
we couldn't find them.
He
disappeared on us.
And then how did you guys eventually?
I think I do a good job in navigating and reasoning with people. Like the times I've gotten in these with any broker or any other parties, I think there's people that get a hot head and they just start fighting, and that's not going to lead you anywhere.
Right.
And this translates to other things in life, not just like on a real estate thing, but I'm sure you deal with a lot of people that are hot heads or they're wrong or something's wrong throughout the process. And there's issues. Issues are going to come, and sometimes they're inevitable and they're not your fault or anyone's fault. They just happen, right? And it's a way of managing them and managing those issues as they come up and communicating like, hey, these are your options. I'm not trying to screw you over. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
Let's just get this done and move past it. Like that was my conversation with them. Like, hey, you signed this. We're here. It's closing day.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make your life difficult. I don't want to. So it's kind of like a light threat in a way.
Yeah.
But if you come off and you start saying, I'm gonna sue you and I'm gonna sue everyone, what is that person gonna do? They're gonna get upset, right?
Yeah.
So they're not gonna react in a positive way, and it's just gonna delay things further. So I think just communication and transparency is the way of doing things in this business, or in anything you do.
I agree, man. Cooler heads always prevail. So to turn the table on you then, we talked about some fun stuff. What about a transaction you've been a part of where you're just like, dang, this was just like a nightmare. I hated this. You know, I hope this never happens again.
Think of one.
That's good you have to think about it, 'cause a lot of people just have them just ready to go.
No, there's definitely been tough ones, but I've always been able to navigate them. I've just, not given up and found the solution.
I gotcha. Okay. But I mean, I guess long story short is I feel like you've adopted a pretty consistent workflow where, you don't necessarily let things get to a certain level, and you try to nip things in the bud, and you've been doing this for long enough to where you kind of anticipate these pitfalls and you just avoid them altogether.
What I've learned is being transparent. No matter how bad the situation is, things are gonna happen, right? So I think a lot of newer agents, and I probably faced this when I started in the industry, you don't want to fuck up a deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you think to not fuck up the deal, maybe say less and not disclose certain things,
mm-hmm.
and maybe not that you're being unethical, but you're like, oh, maybe I'm just not gonna tell the buyer this. I'll tell him tomorrow.
Yeah.
You just have to, but then tomorrow comes and you didn't tell him that, and now he's asking, he found out on his own. So you just have to be transparent. You find out something, you tell the buyer. There's something wrong, listing. You just communicate with all the parties involved, and that's going to avoid a lot of issues long run, because no one could tell you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you're honest, you'll be okay, regardless of how big. Like, if you are a team with your client, whether it's you're representing a seller or a buyer,
mm-hmm.
and you tell them, hey, we're in this together, I'm going to help you get out of it. Like,
yeah.
I've faced issues in transactions where maybe there's something really bad with the house in inspections, and the seller is like, what do I do, and freaking out, and they're asking for a bunch of money from the buyer side.
Yeah.
You just gotta learn to navigate with that, right? Like, hey, we're gonna fix this, have the right team and systems in place, where you make it easier for either a buyer or seller, and you say, but if you're on the buyer side, like, hey, I have a great, support team, handyman, construction, they're gonna take care of this. Like, this is the process. Done that before, that gives you the experience, like, hey, this isn't my first rodeo. I could help you navigate through whatever issue. And that's going full circle now to buyer broker and the agreements and all of that. That's where a buyer's agent is so valuable, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important to pick wisely.
100%, man. Yeah, a combination of those value adds, but more important than the value adds themselves is the experience with the value adds. Referring somebody to a handyman or to a GC or to these people is one thing, but being able to refer them knowing that they've been a part of your personal team on your personal properties, and that you do this consistently for people, and this is not just a, hey, here's somebody's phone number, call them kind of thing. That's what starts to build up that value in that buyer's agent that people are going to start to pay for. And also on the flip side, that's what people kind of are concerned about in some cases with these part-time agents, where they don't have that value. They're more so like, I'll help you draft a contract, I'll help you execute it, and then we'll figure it out as we go.
And then I have another job,
exactly,
9 to 5, so I'll call you like after that.
And before that was okay, because nobody was paying for it, so it was like, if it closes, I'll get the 3% from the seller. If it doesn't, I won't, and we're all on the same page. But things are different now. What are you telling your agents, or what are your guys' outlook on the rest of the year? Do you guys have any predictions on if it's going to get busier for you guys, slower, stay the same?
I mean, third and fourth quarter are generally busier.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, on my personal business, December's always been a crazy month.
Yeah.
November, December.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but every year,
just how it happens.
It's just how it happens.
Yeah.
Miami's become, not seasonal at this point. It's more
Miami,
year round. Like even now, you would think that it's slow and there's no one here, there's people here. I mean, there's a ton of traffic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now there's events all throughout the year. We just had a couple months ago Formula One. Before that, the Miami Open. So yeah, it's the New York people usually come in November, December. So someone that may be looking to upgrade their home, or though you're gonna get that crowd, the domestic client. But the Latin Americans come, they have summer vacation, or their winter is our summer, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So you're constantly getting people. I just did a lease for a South American family that's here for their winter, right? So in Key Biscayne. So really, it's a year-round city. I typically get busier in the later months, November,
December. How are you guys changing anything you're doing with prospecting, or how are you guys generating leads these days?
Social media, sending flyers, written notes, just a little bit of everything. I think you have to cold calling. You have to just touch as many people as you can, and I tell this to agents all the time. You might be stronger going out and social gatherings, and that's your thing, and that's fine. There's agents that have made a killing just being out and about, right?
Yeah.
They'll never write an email, they'll never send the flyer, and they'll never get on the phone, but they're out every night, right?
Yeah.
And that works for them.
Yeah.
Then there's someone that may be a better cold caller.
Yeah.
They're a natural on the phone. Not everyone is a natural on the phone.
Yeah.
So that, stick to that. I think you have to stick to your strengths, right? So, and if you could incorporate things that maybe aren't your strengths, and maybe cold calling isn't your phone, but it isn't your thing, but you get on the phone at least once a week. Try that, right? Try 30 minutes a week.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
You could do 10 calls in 20 minutes, right?
And see what happens.
And see what happens. Or just start calling people that are your friends. And then that starts transitioning into, all right, now I'm confident. I spoke to 10 of my friends. I could speak to a random person now. I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
And you just got to be comfortable doing the uncomfortable. You have to be proactive. Whatever it is you do, you have to do something, right? To get the leads. They're just, people have to know that you're an agent,
right?
Or, you're in the industry.
Yeah.
Whatever, if you're dedicated to selling multifamily or condos, whatever your specialty is, you got to let it known to people. If not, they're not going to reach out to you, right?
Yeah.
So people know I know about multifamily investments, commercial properties, so they'll reach out to me. If not, if I just say, I do condos in Brickell, there's no reason for them to reach out to me, right? So you have to, either you speak to them or you're doing it through social media, and I think you have to just incorporate different marketing strategies and tailor them to you, right? So what are your best strengths, and then start trickling down from there.
So when you lock down these large deals, where did those clients come from, or how did you prospect them to close them?
It's been a mix.
Yeah.
Obviously, on the larger deals, it becomes more of a referral, word of mouth, right? Because it's people that have trusted you on a large transaction, and they refer you to someone else that's in their same circle. So once you do one big one, it's like, all right, I want this person representing me because they represented a friend, colleague, or whatever the case may be, someone that has some relationship to them. So on the bigger deals, I think you're gonna get more on the referral. I mean, you could hit on an online lead and get lucky.
Yeah, lucky. Yeah. So specifically with those two you mentioned, the one with the $15 million, the $10 million one. Think back to those.
One is a referral.
Okay.
And then the other one, I had been in communication. I actually came in through online, but I had been in communication and developed a relationship with them prior. And that was COVID, when everyone was looking online, right? So I think online leads were more prevalent back then because people couldn't come, and there was a lot of people that didn't know anyone in Miami, right? So one of those actually was an online one that I did. It took a long time to develop that relationship, right? It wasn't like all right, online I want this house, and we're under contract in a week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and I know there's agents like I think Chad Carroll gets deals that are like $40 million, right? But they obviously, any online lead that is going to buy a $15 million, $20 million home, they're savvy, right? For the most part.
It should be.
So they're looking at what you've done, and they're not just going to go and buy a $15 million place without knowing that you've done it before or that they trust you, right?
Right.
It's very difficult. Like, I could be doing, when I say that, I could be doing the same online lead generation as a newer agent, and I could get the same lead to bite on both of us, right? Like, him be connected to that and me or she, but I'm probably going to win in that circumstance because they're going to talk to him. They're going to say, oh, this guy's, I don't really trust them. Or unless, I mean, he could be knowledgeable.
Yeah.
It depends.
Yeah.
Which there's some new agents that you know, they know their stuff.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they sense that, or they see their transaction history and they see,
right,
all right, this guy, I rather go with David or an agent out there that has been around for way longer and done much more transactions than me, right? So there's always going to be someone better than you or with more experience and older, and that's not everything, but it's important and there's value to it, right?
Yeah.
And the only way, and I say this all the time, and when I was a newer agent and I was like fishing for online leads or just fishing for any lead, right? I told myself the only way that I could beat out anyone that's older and that's been in the industry is by being more knowledgeable, right?
Yeah.
So if you show, like, for instance, my first big deal was actually a lead that came in to the office. It was a phone call. It was a Douglas Elliman. And I was probably like 23 years old, 23, 24. And it was a $3 million lead.
Mm-hmm.
I had a listing at the time for $500K. And they were like, oh, we're interested in a condo in my beach. And I got excited. I'm like, oh, they're going to buy my $500K listing that I've been trying to sell.
Yeah.
That was like my first listing. And they're like, no, we want to buy $3 million south of 5th. And I was like, that was before, and you've been in Miami for a while, or you know Miami's history, $3 million was a shit ton before. Yeah. It's not the $3 million of today.
Especially
$3 million,
in a condo,
it was like on the real deal for highest transaction of the week. Now that doesn't make it there, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was south of 5th, Marana Grande, one of the more expensive buildings. Mm-hmm. And at the time it was a newer building. And I didn't know anything about the south of 5th. I knew nothing. I knew like Apogee, and that's it. And I knew of it, but I knew Key Biscayne, and that's it. That's all I knew because I grew up there.
Yeah.
And Brickell.
Yeah. And
that night, I just researched everything I could on every architect on every building, every floor plan of every building, because I knew the next day they wanted to see units the next day. So I was like, in order for these people to trust me, I need to be the most knowledgeable person that they come in contact with and give them, because there's a lot of agents that they'll meet up with someone one day, they'll go out with them, show them 10 places, and then they never hear back from them again.
Yeah.
Because they just go another route, they don't feel confident in that person.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I just was more knowledgeable than any other agent that they were going to meet, right? So that's how I got that deal done, and that was my biggest transaction at the time.
That's awesome.
And it was nice. It was rewarding.
Yeah. So your takeaway there is the preparation, right? It's even if you're maybe not the most experienced agent in the world, if you take the time to do your due diligence and prepare for what you're going to do, that sets you apart from a significant population, especially of realtors in South Florida, taking that time and to educate yourself and become a resource.
Of course, I think whenever you're showing a building, you should know the floor plans that you're showing. You can't just show up and open the door. I think you have to add a lot of value, and that's going to be even more important nowadays.
Moving forward,
showing that value. Like, hey, there's this unit downstairs sold for X amount. The one upstairs sold for this. That was a little bit nicer. Those are the conversations that you need to have.
Yeah.
And I think you should be paying this you need to be a resource for your client, not just
just
stand along for the ride.
Yeah.
And that's the issue that I see in the industry, right? People aren't prepared. They're not treating it as a profession.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense. So last question for you here. We have a lot of new agents that we always interact with. They're in front of a new agent. They ask you, David, I'm getting into the industry. It's August 2024. I don't really know too many people. What do you think is the best way for me to get my first deal, get leads, prospect, and hopefully last in this business? What are you telling these people?
New agent, they just got their license.
Brand new, don't really know anybody here yet. And they're like, hey man, like I know you've been here for a while. I've seen you do some great business. You're seen as a leader in your community here. I'm asking you for kind of some advice. What do you think me as a brand new agent should do to hopefully close my first? And they what?
Can they spend money, or this is
yeah, they can spend. They have a little bit of money to invest, but they're not paying $5,000 a month for Zillow or nothing,
Okay.
Yeah.
They can spend how much?
I
would
whatever is reasonable,
look, Go put it. I'm not huge on Zillow because I think you become a slave to Zillow.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to start generating a hot lead, right?
Okay.
Most of those leads are hot leads. So if you could put in $500, $1,000 and get one lead a month.
Yeah.
At least you get one hot lead a month. That's gonna get your feet wet, and you're gonna close one within 6 months. That's and that's one thing. But before that, non-monetarily, that's if you want to make money right away. Right. But this is a long-term business, right? So you can't have a short-term mentality. That's a short-term end of that, going. Right?
Right.
You have to generate a lead. So the only way to do that is, and the fastest way, is through Zillow or Realtor.com or one of these, because they give you the lead right away. There's people searching on them, and they give you the lead, right? With that said, I think pre all of that, you join a team. That's the most important thing. You get your license, you join a team, and you find someone that is aligned with your personality and big teams that you see. And not discrediting them at all. There's 40-person teams. I just find it difficult that principal is dedicating enough time to
all of them.
Right?
Yeah.
I think unless you have levels where you have managers in that team that have been vetted by you or trained by the principal agent, it becomes tough, right? And I see it all the time, right? These huge teams. But I think joining a team is important. Finding a mentor and kind of shadowing someone, and then just learning from that person, and even simple things, the way you communicate, the way you speak to clients. And then apart from that, simultaneously you are calling everyone, developing a social media presence. I think social media is huge, not because someone's going to call you and say, hey David, I want to buy or sell my house, like the day after you post your first post, But I think people are going to have it in the back of their mind, like, hey, this guy's a realtor now. Let me call him, actually. I saw that he's been posting a lot, and he's been active in my area. He actually provides really, important information on home values in my area or whatever. Or he just transacted across the street from me. Well, this person hasn't transacted, but you could give them valuable information, right?
Yeah.
So that's important. And just calling your network. You would be surprised, within your network, who may be interested in buying and selling. Yeah,
those are great tips, man. So I guess just to summarize, online leads, they're not necessarily going to be a long-term play, but I think there's a great way to get your feet wet and to speak to viable candidates and to close your first deal, because they are relatively hot, especially with Zillow. Might be kind of expensive, but they're expensive for a reason, because they convert. Joining a team is super important. It's probably the number one tip I've heard across the board. Because that's the best way to understand exactly where you want to go, because you're shadowing somebody which is where you want to be, right? And there's a tremendous amount of value in mentorship and camaraderie in that way. And there's no better way to learn about real estate than to do real estate. There's no better way to do real estate than to work with somebody who does real estate, right? And then the most obvious one, and it seems to be the hardest tip for everybody, tip number 3, is to tap into your network. Is to kind of get over that anxiety and fear of bothering people, and to put yourself in a position where you believe in yourself as a resource versus a nuisance. And when you're prospecting to your network, whether it's your personal or your professional network, you are doing that to help somebody versus to ask them for business. And if you truly believe that you are an asset and that you do have value in your value proposition, and you're not just telling people you're in real estate because you want to make commission, but you're telling them because you actually want to help your friends get the best deals, save money, and things like that, then that's when prospecting your database becomes easy, right?
To add to that, I always say it's don't, and this touches on what you're saying, don't reach out to someone asking them for something. Never.
Yeah.
Just give them, because I see this all the time. It's like, hey, just following up. No. Hey, I saw that this closed right next to your house. What do you think of it? You know, give them some value, and then you're still reaching out, but you're giving them something.
Yeah.
So they're gonna respond, right? If you just say I'm following up, and you're working with either a buyer or seller that was kind of interested or on the fence, and you're not giving them any value, there's no point of reaching out. So
okay, much harder to convert. Yeah.
It's important to really show that whenever you reach out to someone, I think you need to proposition, right? So, hey, I have this for you, like, or this is the information I've gathered,
yeah.
or whatever it is. It could be something simple or
yeah.
more in depth.
Yeah.
But it's much better than, if I were to reach out to you and I told you, Yousif, just following up,
yeah.
and then the next week I say, hey, just follow, you're gonna get annoyed.
Yeah.
You're gonna say this guy just wants
that's
to.
That's a great takeaway, man. Yeah, it's not just about the action, but it's about the intention behind it too, and it's being intentional with our communication, because the end goal is the same.
The easy route is I follow up and I say, hi, I'm following up, and you're gonna tell me, oh, I'm interested now. No, that's, if you haven't answered me the last week, and you haven't reached out to me, that means you're probably thinking about it or something. But if I tell you something and give you some information, and I'm constantly giving you information, I'm showing you my value, and I'm still reaching out. So I'm killing two birds with one stone. And that day that you're ready, you're gonna say, hey, this guy's been giving me all these tips, and or he's been showing me what's going on in the neighborhood. I'm gonna work with this guy.
Being value driven, man. That's awesome. Good shit, bro. Thank you.